Okay, here is the lecture on the Enlightenment for our class on Gothic literature. So, the Gothic revival is a specific literary movement in the 18th century. And this period has like three different names. So, I want to go through some of these different names. There is the Enlightenment, which is kind of the general name for this historical period in the history of ideas. There is the Augustan Age. There is also, this is also called Neoclassicism. And this is basically the numbers of these years are the 1700s. So this is the period where the Gothic revival starts, and it starts in the second half of the 18th century because Walpole's novel, which completely starts Gothic literature, is written in 1765. You don't have to write this down. Don't write down the major authors, but you might have heard of like Daniel Defoe, Swift, Pope, Fanny Burney, Samuel Richardson. Jane Austen starts writing at the very end of this period. So this is the period in which the Gothic revival occurs. Some major historical events of this period: the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and all kinds of important philosophical and scientific discoveries and publications. Locke, Thomas Paine, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Isaac Newton, the discovery of calculus, all these philosophers and scientists, and this is a real era of intellectual discovery. These were Enlightenment values, and this period had somewhat really different values than our culture has. They really valued reason, using your reason, logic, rules, and harmony. They felt that art should be didactic, that, it should be entertaining, it should please, but you should also learn a lesson from it. It should instruct. And this is the big difference between this era and our era. They valued imitation over originality, and they valued old things over new things. They would have said, just copy something from someone great, like do it in their style. Don't create something new. You should imitate something old. That's why this period is often called Neoclassicism, right? Trying to do things in that style. They liked restraint, they liked refinement, they liked rationality, and there's a fairly strong amount of religious belief and piety, which is like outward religious observance, like being a very religious person. Does it sound like Gothic literature fits with these values, or maybe works against them? I would suggest that the Gothic revival is a kind of reaction to this more dominant culture. But we will explore that in the this part, the beginning of the semester. So this is the Enlightenment. This is also the period. This period is the rise of the novel. Some of the first novels are printed in the 1740s. And novels had a very different context than they do today, because novels in the 18th century are initially anonymous, right? A lot of people didn't put their name on the novel. You might notice that Walpole does not put his name on the first edition of The Castle of Otranto. They are disposable, and they are scandalous. They are frivolous. They are not considered like important works of art. They are considered like entertaining trifles. So, and when I say disposable, they are fairly disposable, although novels are also a luxury item for most people. You had to be literate to read a novel. You had to have like sources of artificial light, like candles and lamps. You needed to have leisure time to read a novel. Those are all things that essentially limit novel reading to people of the middle class and up in the 17th century. Just to kind of give you a taste of how people think about novels, probably one of the most popular novels of the entire 18th century is Samuel Richardson's Pamela, which was written in 1740, so about 25 years before the Castle of Otranto. Don't write all this stuff down. Do not write this down. But I just want you to see in his introduction to this novel, he really tries to defend it on the grounds that you'll learn a good lesson from reading this novel, right? It's going to divert and entertain, but it's going to improve your mind. It's going to be really moral, right? It's going to paint vice in its proper colors and set virtue in its own amiable light. And it's going to be really engaging. It's going to be interesting, and therefore, like, because it holds the reader's interest, it's going to really give them that lesson of morality. So this is kind of Richardson's defense of writing a novel. The word novel means new, right? And when we talk about this era, it doesn't like new things. They like old things. The most respected literary art forms in the 18th century are drama and poetry. They are not the novel. That will change in the 19th century, but we aren't there yet. So, okay, so this is the background. This is the culture in which Walpole writes a novel, and he writes a Gothic novel. So for Monday, you're going to read Walpole's preface to The Castle of Otranto. And I want you to read it and think about how it works in terms of neoclassical values. How does he want people to think about this novel? And note that he does not present it as his fictional creation. Notice how he tries to present the Castle of Otranto. Also, we're reading Samuel Johnson's essay, Rambler number 4, which is about novels and novel reading. How does Johnson's arguments about novels reflect neoclassical values? What does he think novels should do, and why? What problems occur when novels start being more realistic, according to Johnson? And think about who reads novels, according to Johnson. And see if you can figure out kind of like Johnson has a very specific argument about what novels should be like and why they should be that way. So these are things to think about for Monday, and I will see you then.